going to show you what happens when you don't pay. Ow.
And people have obviously pointed to the irony that the point that I was trying to make is how peaceful life was right before he got shot. And that
to my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah.
Political radicalism is a catalyst. Political radicalism does not come out of peace, prosperity, rising wages, stable families, church attendance, and happy people. Happy people, grateful people, do not get behind Vladimir Lenin, and they certainly don't get behind Chavez or Castro. People that own nothing, that feel like their property is diminishing, they don't have property, or their dollar is diminishing in value, they start to look for alternatives. And so the political project in front of us as conservatives should be, how do we actually de-radicalize the country in the next couple of years? That's my obsession. And that's why I say I try not to think about all this other stuff, because it just, it's so much brain space. My number one obsession is I know what is coming next.
It is Sunday, September 14th, 2025, 4:30 p.m. This is the Winter Solace Podcast. This is Cosmic Weapon of Thule, Winter Solace. Before we get to the podcast, which I believe will be one of our more interesting videos, I want to say that donations are now possible again via the app Cash App. Cash tag Winter Solace CWOT. I'm going to get this put back in the shop, but for anybody that has Cash App, this is how you can donate to support us and support the expansion of the label. If you can't afford right now to purchase products from us because of any expenses, you can just set it up. You can donate. You can even send less than $1. You can send whatever amount of money to me you want with this, and it will go back in to expand the operation, get new equipment, produce stuff, buy more promotion, operating expenses, so that we can continue to expand and build and launch into the most unique political counterpoint in black metal history. And that's exactly what we're doing, and that's that, because we are definitely the counterpoint to the modern political right-left dichotomy and all of that. Winter Solace Podcast, WinterSolaceProduction.com. We also have our merch store at MySpreadShop, Winter Solace merch, MySpreadShop.com. YouTube at Kyoto Roller Derby, Instagram, Cosmic Weapon of Thule, X, Telegram, our Telegram chat, the 88th Chamber of Shaolin, Facebook at WinterSolaceProductions.com/CW, all over the place. I was going to take a week off, actually, but it seems that, we're going to talk about the Tolerant left. Specifically, the assassination of conservative political commentator Charlie Kirk. And before everybody starts bitching at me about how I apparently don't hate Israel enough because I'm not glorifying this like some other leftist tool, I'm going to get to that. He was the moderate position. Charlie Kirk was a conservative media figure who would actively go and speak on college campuses. He would go into the belly of the beast and just say, hey, there is the brainwashing that's funded by the Chi-Com globalists and all of that has all of the trans stuff and all that, and the critical racer, all of that, and just says, hey, maybe there's an alternative to that is, reality. Well, I don't have it with all the photos of this. People, are wondering, well, why don't employers want people with gender studies degrees? And the general response is, well, maybe if you spend 4 years learning and studying gender and can't tell the difference between a man and a woman, maybe they don't trust you enough. And while we're on that subject, as you're starting to see, Office Depot fires worker who refused to print Charlie Kirk prayer vigil poster. Now, I wanted to talk about this specifically because I am somebody who has had print shops refuse to work with us, refuse to print anti-Israel t-shirts back when we were making those 15 years ago or whatever, and all of that, or other printing companies that just say, hey, we don't feel comfortable doing this. Okay, and whether or not a private business can refuse clients like that based on whatever they're promoting or whatever is not what I am debating about in this particular instance. Okay, Office Depot is not some hole-in-the-wall print shop that donates to save the environment and is openly leftist in the inner cities. I mean, there are those that are like that. Okay, but this is fucking Office Depot. And they merged with Office Max in what was the corporate Office Romance. And they pretty much have a monopoly on office supplies in the United States. Because unless you're somewhere where there's a Staples. There's only one Staples near here. And I don't buy anything there. Because it's a 45-minute drive for everything to be even more expensive. If you go into an Office Depot and the people at the printing counter just say, hey, I don't feel comfortable printing this for political reasons, they can get somebody else who works there to do that. Or they could direct you to another Office Depot location to have the work done. Because, again, it's fucking Office Depot. Some city figure here, where I live, who is on a bunch of boards and stuff related to downtown events and walking along one of the rivers, or the trails along the rivers that I'll go walking at occasionally. Shared a link from NPR on her Facebook page and was fired because a bunch of people in the city sent screenshots to City Hall. And now the left is like, oh, well, we're getting canceled now. It's like, yeah! And this isn't somebody's life being ruined for a racist joke. These are just people losing their jobs and stuff for being an ass and glorifying radicalized political violence. Reality is, and that's why I want to get back to this, he was the moderate position. My only... Okay. 18,000 new chapters of Turning Point USA have sprung up since his assassination. They martyred this guy. And his main message is basically anything is better than the leftist indoctrination that is there. Now, my only exposure to him and anything he believed in was a 90-minute podcast I listened to that he did with somebody else. I personally don't believe he is Martin Luther King Jr., as some conservative commentators are putting out there, but that is irrelevant. Because the work of Martin Luther King Jr. elevated a racially disenfranchised group and completely altered permanently the political landscape in the United States in a way that cannot be changed back and cannot be traced back to elective things. You choose your political beliefs. You can't choose your skin color. He was murdered in broad daylight while speaking in apparently, I didn't know this, rabid leftist Salt Lake City, Utah. And to all of the people who are complaining that I've encountered through this, that he didn't hate Israel enough or something, failed to understand the point that I'm trying to make. And my message to those people is, first off, fuck you. It doesn't matter what his viewpoints on Israel was. He was going into the lion's den, in the belly of the beast, and speaking to people and relating to them. Letting people who have disagreements and who disagree with him speak. You just sit there on your phone, on your Instagram, or whatever, with your sketch records that you bought somewhere, if you bought them, or liking your little memes or whatever, okay, and think you're an activist. Think that the 10 people or the people in your feed are going to be influenced by that. Okay? Alright? You don't have any... You don't have a right to comment on something like that. In that way or shape or form. Now, Charlie Kirk was the guy who, after listening to that podcast, is what inspired me to go and look into Gen Z and the Zoomers using the buy it now, pay later apps for food. That's where that video came from. And he had the ability to go do that and go into these places and do that. And He got assassinated for it by some Zoomer Antifa leftist scum who... And that's just a hard situation. Okay, that guy, the guy who did this, the assassin, living with a male transitioning into a female. That was his significant other. And likely the only relationship he will have. Can you imagine being so terrible with two guys who are so indoctrinated and all this crap? And so terrible with women that one of them has to go and get gender reassignment surgery so they can get laid? Like, how does that conversation go? Do they just, do rock, paper, scissors? You know, who gets to go be the man? And who can just illegally change his name and walk away from all this and quit politics or just wake up? And then whose life is just permanently ruined by all that? Can you imagine being that? That's gone. That's what's out there. That's what's in these colleges and places. That's what Charlie Kirk was going into in the lion's den and fighting back against. And if you're going to go, that's how you go. You go out on your sword. You go out fighting. I couldn't do that. Like, if one of the Winter Solace releases or products or something was discovered on campus or something that I was involved in, it became a fucking news thing. Like, back when they were smuggling stuff I either made or released into Berkeley. You know, if that became a giant news story, here's exactly what I would do. I would just go, well, we don't know how that got there. We don't know where these people are going to, where this stuff goes to. Thank you, good day. We don't know anything about this, and just recede. Okay? That's what I would do. I couldn't go and speak at these universities. I'm not built to do that. And if you're listening to this and buying my label's products in a dorm in somewhere in some leftist area or something, that's fine. Obviously, we thank you for the support, but we're not built to, be this dramatic influencer or something. Okay, we're not built to do that. I couldn't do that. So all these people whining online behind their phones and their keyboards and stuff. Oh well, Charlie Kirk didn't hate Israel enough, and you don't know how the political left works in this country or whatever. There is no communism here. I think these people are worse. Again, but I didn't already say it already. Fuck you. You are not on the pulse of what's going on. Because this event is the exact type of thing that the fucking boogaloo accelerationists are hoping for. And now it's time for you to come out of the shadows and do something, and you're not going to do anything. Okay, yeah, you're just going to stay in the shadows in your dank little basement and just bitching on your phone or living out of a vehicle. Traveling from state to state. Doing nothing. You're just going to sit there. You're not going to do anything. Okay, so just don't fucking kid yourself. Don't just sit there and pretend that you're some radical extremist edgelord just waiting for the day. Okay, you're not going to do anything. Somebody involved in this process told me I didn't understand how the political thing worked in this country. And before I do this, I want to just point out, has communism ever worked? This is AI. It is highly debated, and it is a highly debated and contentious question whether communism has ever worked, as its outcomes have varied significantly across different contexts. The answer depends largely on specific metrics used for evaluation, as well as the interpretation of whether a country was ever truly communist. In practice, no country has achieved the classless, stateless society envisioned by Marxist theory, but different states have used elements of communist ideology to guide their political and economic systems with mixed results. Okay, and this is what you have to understand. Okay, the political dichotomy of this country, of the United States and most of the Western world, is basically on the left wing, there is this neoliberal socialist outlook, which is co-opted or controlled, possessed by this demonic, otherworldly ideological component. That is the antithesis of the creator. Okay. That's what is on the left wing of the spectrum. Of the bird. The right wing everything else. This is the current reality. I was one of the millennials that listened to Jon Stewart every day and used that for and Stephen Colbert back before he was a puppet for this and the deep state. I was one of those people who tuned into that every day. I fell for the Obama deception. And now I'm here. Because I have a thinking brain. And I have critical thinking. See, what the assassination of Charlie Kirk did was simply flip the switch, and now people understand. They understand that we've been in a war with these people, that there's been a war like this, first metaphysically, now it's here. Hot war in the streets. That's now a reality. You cannot deny that fact anymore. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. And yeah, all these senators and all these people can just go on and cloak all their radical politics and everywhere else. It's like, no. When the Democrat Party doesn't get what they want, they get violent. When Abraham Lincoln diversified slavery and ended the racial component of it so white people can be slaves too, they assassinated him for it. Everyone's like, oh, well, he ended slavery. No, that's what it on paper it did, but he just opened it up to everybody. We all go to these jobs we hate to get money that we can't spend on things we want, can't live the lives we want. We're all slaves to a specific system. And for the people who don't understand this, socialism is the first stage of communism. That's what I was getting at. As a stage between capitalism and communism. What happens is, during this socialism and this transition phase, you enter into the dictatorship of the proletariat. In Marxist philosophy, the dictatorship of the proletariat is a condition in which the proletariat, or working class, holds control over state power. It is a transition phase, but here's the thing, it never ends. Like Cuba, they've been in the dictatorship of the proletariat endlessly. You could argue that it ended in the Soviet Union. Russia is an ideal Marxist society. But oh wait, they're capitalists. They just went back to capitalism because it doesn't work. The communist superstate or whatever, that's fascism, that's totalitarianism. So all those fucking dumbasses that don't understand how all of that works and why this is the enemy are going to learn. They're going to wake up and they're going to realize, because here's newsflash. It won't matter if you swung to the right or the left. When the fascism comes, they will simply swing you by the neck. That's the reality of this. That's the reality of the country now. That is the political reality of the United States. That is the political reality of Europe. that it's a political reality. It's not the political reality of Canada. They've already completely capitulated, but this is the political reality that is here. This is the fight that everyone is in. And all that this guy did by assassinating Charlie Kirk in broad daylight was just accelerate people awakening to that fact. And then all of a sudden you get these idiots on the right who are just going to bitch because people don't hate Israel enough, and they're not going to do anything. And that's what we're circling back to, and that's what I wanted to do this video about. And I'm going to unveil a concept here for you, and that I'm going to print flyers for, and that's why this video is going to be important. This is a pyramid guide for directing negative energy, and for this it reads from the top down. And so we're going to start at the top, and we're going to use the food pyramid. Everybody remembers the USDA food pyramid. I remember it. It didn't work. It's all basically upside down. If you want to end up fat, if you actually study anything about nutrition, you know that it doesn't necessarily work. Because this is like at the top here, okay, you need certain oils, you need proper fats, but you don't necessarily need a bunch of sugars and everything else. And, you know, dairy is like loaded with sugar and everything else, and it's terrible for you. And you have too much protein, you get sick. Fruits and vegetables, and then this, which you actually need sparing amounts of. Okay. So, but for our assumption, it's accurate. And we're going to start, and this reads from the top down. And all the people on the right that don't know where to put all their negative energy, they need to listen to this very carefully. Okay, at the very, very top, that you're supposed to hate sparingly and direct your negative energy towards sparingly would be the Zionists, the Abrahamic religions, the Jesus people. You want to direct sparing amounts of your energy towards that. Those are the moderates. Okay, those are the... Charlie Kirk was basically here. That is only the tip of the iceberg. The next step down from that deserves more of your attention and energy, 2 to 3 servings, is radical Islam. The one that's not compatible with all of the other ones. Because that is a tool that is used to destabilize societies. They have purposely been kept primitive and ruled over by religious oligarchs and other economics, like in Saudi Arabia, where you have a very wealthy ruling class. That's what deserves like 2 to 3, moderate amounts of your energy. And then on the other half of this, the other column, the globalists, the UN, NATO, all of that, because you do need some ruling body, and you do have to have some governmental authority. Okay, sorry. You do have to have a state of some sort. You do have to have some ruling authority. I mean, yes, is the UN co-opted by a bunch of people that are just siphoning off the wealth and all the aid and is a giant money laundering scheme? Yes. And propping up the military-industrial complex and endless war? Yes. You bet you. And the next step down from that is transhumanists, the singularity, transhumanism, the technocratic enslavement, everything else. That generally the end game of this. And then the other level of that deserves more of your energy, or the same amount, because the transhumanists and stuff, that's what's coming next. The tech censorship, that's what's already here. But that's the next phase of this. AI, all that. The other half of that is the radical left and the Marxists and Antifa and all of that. Okay. All right. That is who deserves a large portion of energy, more so than the Zionists and more so even than the radical Islam people. That's the Democrats, the Marxists, and the anti-fascists. Okay. That is where your energy is. There is, and because they are the ones who are perpetually manufacturing the divided partisan climate where you can't get anything done. Like the globalists, the transhuman, all of that, everything else, they can't. You remove them past their ideology, they're fine. They're a non-existent thing. The political ideology of the anti-fascists and all the Marxists and stuff, that's all that's there, and that is the one that is altering and feeding off and distorting reality. And the bottom group that deserves all of your hatred and a lot of your negative energy, or the most of it, is in the following order: academics, atheists, apathetic Zoomers, people who infiltrate right-wing political movements, traitors, incompetent people, internet keyboard warriors, people who play both sides for money, people too mentally ill or addicted to drugs to function, music press, mass media in general, people who flip black metal records, and then lastly, the most is pedophiles. If you read this diagram from the top down, the thing at the very bottom that should be eradicated off of this earth and deserves all of your, that's where the bulk of your negative spiritual energy that you're fighting towards, should be directed to, is the pedophiles. And at some point, you have to categorize all of this, and these idiots that say, oh, well, he don't hate Israel enough for me to care. This is not anything that I care about. I just want to sit there in my radical little digital bubble. It's like, you are not ready to be unplugged from the Matrix. And I want to thank everybody. This has been the first video of the Winter Sauce Podcast for October. And I will state that at some point we are going to try to squeeze in that week break. But I just want to say thank you. And then wintersauceproductions.com. And we're going to go out with something from the first Thule-Jugend album, which should be available again. It will be available. It will be available at the around October 1st-ish. A reprint of that is. So just thank you and have a wonderful day.
Purity and glory, washed by the blood of the warriors, those who fought for the last victory. Far away, the dreams of a great leader, and the end is real and mortality. Eternal life, with ideas and visions, ascended with a greater finality.
Shadows across the night.